Welcome. Today we're going to talk about how to avoid measuring mistakes and a few best practices when it comes to taking measurements for a made-to-order wedding dress. So I've got my mannequin here, and when we're talking about taking measurements, we're typically talking about bust, waist, and hips. That tends to be the standard when we're placing special orders. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape measure, and I've already checked this to make sure that it's accurate. So what I mean by that is I've gone up against a ruler and another tape measure to make sure everything is gauged properly. Sometimes when tape measures get old, they can get stretched out or even dried out, and then your measuring isn't so accurate. All right, so the first measurement we're going to talk about is the bust measurement. And what that means is we're going to come across the apex or the widest part of the breast in order to get our measurement. Now, what I often do as a best practice is I have my client stand in front of a mirror, and that way I can see what the tape measure is doing behind them and make sure that I'm not dipped down too low or coming across too high, so I can be sure that I'm accurate. So we're going to take our tape measure, we're going to come across the back bra line and around in front across the apex, as you can see here. Now, when I'm doing this on a client, what I will often do is I will actually squeeze the tape measure because we have a little bit of give in our body. And then I will ask them to take a deep breath. And when they take that deep breath from their chest, you can see their rib cage expanding, and they'll come back down to relax and kind of settle in. Oftentimes my measurement is the same, but I just want to make sure that nobody's carrying any tension in their body and kind of standing awkwardly. And that helps to kind of eliminate any possible inaccuracies in my measurement. So that's what we'll do for the bust. Now, the next measurement is the waist. So the waist we usually denote by being the smallest part, but everyone comes in different shapes and sizes. So what we want to make sure of is that we're right about above the navel, maybe about an inch or so. Sometimes people's smallest part might be right under the bust, and that's not their true waist. It's actually going to be down a little bit farther. So make sure you're kind of going on a case-by-case basis when you're taking measurements, especially around the waist. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come around. We're going to get that tape measure all the way. And I always do the same thing. I give a nice squeeze in. I let the customer know that that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to give you a little squeeze here. And then I ask them to take that deep breath again from their chest, making sure that they're relaxing. They're not standing awkwardly, shifting their hips or anything like that. And when they kind of expand and come back to standing normally and more relaxed, then I can take note of their measurement. And our final measurement is the hip measurement. So we want to take this from the widest part of our bottom, which is usually at the apex of our rear. So when I get that tape measure around, again, I want to make sure that I'm finding the right level. I want to come straight across, completely parallel to the floor. And oftentimes I will ask people to just give me a little wiggle in the hips, make sure that I'm not over tightening them. And that way I know they can have a little bit of movement while still getting an accurate measurement for the hip. Okay, friends, so to summarize, when we are taking measurements for a made-to-order wedding dress, we're going to focus on the bust, waist, and hip measurements in order to decide our sizing. So the bust measurement is across the apex or the widest part of the chest. The waist measurement is typically the smallest part, but we want to make sure that we are measuring just above the navel so that we're in the right area. And then for the hips, we're going to be at the widest part of the hips, kind of around the apex of the bum area. Now, a couple of hot tips that we have for you would be to have your customers stand in front of a mirror. That way you can see what's going on around the back when you're taking that measurement, and make sure that your tape measure isn't falling or twisting, anything like that. We also want to make sure that we are checking our tape measure before we even get started, making sure that that measurement is accurate, we haven't stretched it out over time, etc. And most importantly, friends, let's make sure we are measuring at least twice, so that way we can compare and ensure that we are completely accurate. Happy selling!